This is a very, very strong build, very broken if you know how to use it, because there are many technicalities with this build. I'm guessing that a lot of the veterans that know all of the terminology for this are already going to be familiar with all of these things right here, but there's things that we can do to potentialize the damage on this guy and deal as tremendous amounts of damage as we dealt with the enemy that I showed you on Showcase. Now on Exploration it's also going to be amazing, because this is a build that basically requires for you to do, in essence, for you to do one little single thing. And that is going to be spamming the heavy attack, because what this does is that it gives you the Frenzied Cleave. The Frenzied Cleaves gives you an unlimited combo. You heard me right, this cannot be stopped unless the only reason why this would be stopping is because you run out of stamina. So that's one of the good things about this build. However, if you want to furthermore potentialize the damage on that, there's going to be a couple of things that you are going to need to have into account and to know for you to do such a thing. But yeah, well, let's actually just get right into it, into the intricacies of those little things that we are going to have right in here. This is going to be the Faded Memories armor set, and essentially revolves around the usage of the Frenzied Cleave. The first thing that you need to have in mind is that this build is going to shine tremendously, like you have no idea, whenever you take advantage of the Enraged playstyle. What is Enraged? Enraged basically happens whenever your stamina is below 50%. So whenever your stamina is below 50%, you're going to receive a flat 20% damage increase to your heavy attacks, provided that you sustain that stamina below the 50%. Not only that, but your stamina damage is going to be increased by 10%. So the overall goal for us is to have as huge amounts of stacks of stamina as we can possibly have, and be spamming whenever we are not attacking, because we do want to be mindful about that. We want to be spamming the dodge button. That is why it's going to be very important for us to always have the Moonlight Stance active at all times, because the Moonlight Stance is going to furthermore potentialize the damage of our Frenzied Cleave. However, we'll dive into that a little bit later on. Let's keep talking about the armor and how can I take the most advantage of the armor. Remember that there's the jars usage, that I do not want handicap players that do not have the jars to actually have that. This is just the explanation of the base build as it is. One very good thing to have in mind is that if you're going to be using jars, it's a very good option to use the Cutthroats. Although I'm not entirely sure if that would be that very much possible with the jaws, because this is a set piece, a set that requires quite literally 80 pieces. So I'm not sure how would it work if you were to have like 7. Maybe it should only give you the Frenzied Cleave. Anyways, I'm not trying to handicap anyone with the jars, but if you want to be using the jars, a good option would be to use the Cutthroats in here. But if you can't, then let's just keep talking about how amazing this thing is. What you want to have for your multipliers on your gear when you're augmenting your stuff is going to be damage multiplier increase, attack damage increase, and specifically when it comes to the attack damage increase, is going to be the Potent Blow. anything that gives you damage basically, but more often than not you're going to be using attack damage. The stamina recovery in here is just something nice that I managed to get that I didn't want to get rid of because I had already spent too much lacrima in this weapon. For the helmet, for your gloves, and for your shoes, you are going to have the stamina damage increase, the damage increase, the damage multiplier increase, the attack damage, but also it's very important that you have on as many pieces of your armor as you can the max stamina. As a matter of fact, the set on itself already gives you a plus of 200 max stamina in here. That is why in our stats that we're going to be discussing in a little while, we have so much endurance as well, which is something that we always do, but anyways, those are just technicalities. But you will see in here that I have also max stamina right in here. Max stamina is very important because it also has lots of stamina recovery. Because we have 20% stamina recovery in here, I am using Keshtad the Unyielding. I would advise for something else, because the more stamina recovery that you have, yes, you can continue the combos that much more, but it's more difficult for you to manage it, because remember that we're stacking as much stamina, because the more stamina that we can, the easier it gets for us to remain into the enraged stance. And remember, the enraged stance is when you are below 50% stamina. Not only that, you are going to have a rear assault 10% damage increase. We are going to leverage that in a little while. It's not going to be a mandatory thing because it's not going to give you that much of amazing stuff like the Enrage is going to give you. But anyways, the Enrage, the max stamina, the Enrage a potent blow damage increase for 15 seconds. Those are working on a synergy, a very, very powerful synergy that is furthermore multiplied by the damage multipliers increase that you have into the rest of your gear. So basically, you have a 20% flat 20% damage increase for your enraged and potent blows, provided that you are on the enrage. But not only that, you deal stamina damage 10% so that you can get the enemy into the exhausted state that much faster. Moving on, let's talk about the stats. Fortunately enough, we don't need any strength right in here, and we can take advantage of the scaling of the weapon a little bit, mildly. But the most important thing is always going to be vitality and endurance. This is light armor, of course, so the weight is not really that important for us, but the health is very much in our interest to have the max stamina, as many stamina that we can get. The endurance gives you the hard cap on 60. On 60, that's what, if you move forward, it's going to change from 1 to 30 is going to give you 15 stamina per point. From 30 to 60 is going to give you 13 stamina per point. And from 60 to 90, it is going to give you 10 stamina per point, which is still very much good. But might as well just slot those points into the proficiency, because the proficiency is not only going to give us stamina damage increase by a percentage, it's also going to increase the scaling of our weapon, and it's also going to give us stamina dodge stamina cost decrease, which, well, it's not that ideal, because remember that we want to be using dodges. Whenever you're not attacking, you are going to be dodging. You do not want to be waiting. Never with this build. Never. Because the peak of this build is going to happen whenever you're enraged. Now, there's a couple of things that I do want to discuss in here that are going to be the most important things for you, like always the resources, so that you can be getting a little bit more spirit. However, this is not a spirit dependent build, so that is not going to matter that much. As a matter of fact, this is one of the most simplistic builds that I have always that I have seen in here in the first Berserker Khazan, because of the low requirement and investment for you to be able to do the stuff that you're seeing in video. Everything else is just going to be vanity, dude. You're not really going to need that much. What you are going to need is going to be the Moonlight Stance, because the Moonlight Stance is going to natively benefit our Frenzied Strikes. It's going to double damage because you have that Phantom right in there that is always following you, and yes, it does work with the Frenzied Cleave as well. But the most important thing that I like to have is the Moonlight Stance persistence, because The Moonlight Stance duration increases by 3 seconds when performing a Bring Dodge or a Bring Guard up to a maximum 30 seconds, and we want to maximize that as much as we can possibly do. Also, we have the Moonlight Step that allows us to double dodge. I can't stress enough how powerful and how broken this little thing right in here is. It also, there's one that gives you more iframe, so just all in all, everything that you can get from here is just going to be amazing. The only thing that you're not going to need as a must or as a base, I just have vanity, is this 3 right in here, because we're not going to be using the full moon at all times. We are going to be using the frenzied cleave, so I just have this in here because I have my mastery level maxed out, but it's not needed right in here. So for swift attacks, it's just going to be the Moonlight Stance, Vitality, Persistence, and then for Moonlight Step is going to be Intercept and After Image. Those are going to be the main things that you are going to need. Now, Shadow Reversal, it's going to be a very important part of this build, so this is a main thing that you are going to necessarily need to have. Chaser is going to give you the stamina cost of attacks are temporarily decreased each time an enemy is exhausted, so that you can continue the combo that much more. The Devour that gives you more spirit whenever you exhaust an enemy, that's actually kind of nice. And then we have the Vital Strike, the Shrew, the Quick Slash and things like that. We're not using anything like that because it meddles to some extent with the Frenzied Cleave. You do not, and I mean you really do not want to take any points in here, because if you learn something in here is going to require for you to choose either the Frenzied Cleave or the Shadow Cleave that you have just leveled up right in there, and we're not going to be using any of those. So here the Frenzied Cleave, it's going to be basically our Potent Blow playstyle right in here. One thing that it does happen is that it gives you 15%, the armor gives you 15% for the Shadow Strike, so if you won't be using something like Spirit, Shadow Strike is going to be your go-to in here. However, I still believe that even if we don't get that extra 15% damage, Trance has always been my all-time Spirit skill for the spear, especially because it allows you to enter the Moonlight Stance in just a blink of an eye. So I highly advise for you to keep the Trance in here, just because of the pure fact that it allows you to enter into the Moonlight Stance very, very fast, thanks to the Liberation. Because essentially what this combo does right in here is that it allows you to press X, and then after that you can enter into the trance, and then the trance is going to immediately proc very, very promptly the Moonlight Stance. So it's something like this, and there you are. You're already on the Moonlight Stance that you can be extended by dodging. So that's everything that you need to know about the skill tree. As for the playstyle and the combos that you are going to have, that's one very good combo that I should like to recommend for you to use, but that's going to be for utility, that's not for damage. So it's essentially just a light attack and then trance and then a light attack, and then you're immediately into the Moonlight Stance. And once you're into the Moonlight Stance, you are going to be attacking like a maniac, and that's always going to be with your, you will see in here that I do not have equipped my Frenzied Strike. That's because I meddled with this, remember, so you actually have to equip this thing right in here. Once you equip it, you are going to have it right in here with you. You will notice that I do not have my Moonlight Stance active, which is why I'm going to perform my combo right in here. I have my Moonlight Stance active right now, and then this is where I can keep continuing my combo. If I feel that I'm getting like to attack with the enemy, I'm going to be moving like a maniac, and then this is my prompt to keep attacking and continue the combo, so on and so forth. Whenever you exhaust an enemy, you always want to use the Shadow Reversal to take advantage of that extra 10%. So the Shadow Reversal works something, I believe that you can use X and then the Shadow Reversal, and then you can continue your Frenzied Strikes right in here. That is going to give you much more damage whenever you have an exhausted enemy, and then you can finish up with your finisher right in here. So that's the overall build with this armor set. It's very, very powerful, but it also conditions you for you to be like very aggressive and very active and very dodgy and have a whole bunch of stamina. If you don't have like a whole bunch of stamina in your set pieces and you feel that you're struggling with this build, is because you don't have that much stamina. So yeah, you want to be enraged at all times for you to take advantage of the damage potential that you are going to have right in here. So This is a build that also, while exploration, it's going to be amazing for you to be running, but whenever you are running, just make sure that you are stopping by to some extent sometimes, so that you make sure that every time that you start a fight, you're always on 50%, because that's when you're going to be on your peak with this armor set. If you like the content and like it, super appreciate it. Also, you that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, and a beautiful day. Goodbye.